Among the Luo, the birth of a child is never just a medical event. It is a community event, a spiritual event, a celebration with rules older than anyone alive can remember. And everything from who was allowed in the room, to how the cord was cut, to how many days the baby stayed indoors was decided long before the child arrived. Welcome to Echoes of the Luo. Today, birth the Luo way. When a Luo woman was about to give birth, the first person called was not a doctor. It was the Nyamrerwa. The Nyamrerwa was the traditional birth attendant, an old woman, skilled, experienced, and in many cases from a lineage of women who had done this same work for generations. She was also called Jacholo, the one who pulls, because her role was to guide the child safely out of the womb and into the world. After the birth, the Nyamrerwa was not simply thanked with words. She was given meat and other gifts. The Luo called this cleaning her face, honoring her properly for what she had done. Becoming a Nyamrerwa was not something you simply decide. If a mother wanted her daughter to learn this work, she sent her with a goat as payment to apprentice under an experienced Nyamrerwa, learning by watching, learning by doing, carrying the knowledge forward. In a Luo homestead, the birth ideally took place inside the house of the first wife, the Mikayi. Her house was the spiritual anchor of the homestead. Life began there. But there was one strict rule about the firstborn. The first child of a newly married woman had to be born in her parents' home, not her husband's homestead, her own mother's house. And if it happened, by accident or circumstance, that she gave birth at her parents' home for any other child after the firstborn, the husband was fined a pig, a goat, or a sheep, paid before she and the baby could be brought back to his homestead. The place of birth was not a small thing. It carried weight, it had rules, and those rules had consequences. After the birth, the mother and her baby did not simply step back into normal life the next morning. There was a period of seclusion, rest, spiritual protection. For a baby girl, 3 days. For a baby boy, 4 days. During this time, the baby stayed inside the house. The reason given for keeping the girl for 3 days and the boy for 4 was specific and practical by the Luo understanding. If the baby went outside too early, rain could enter the child's mouth and make them damp. The extra day for the boy reflected the particular care given to a male child. The mother also observed restrictions during this time. Certain foods were forbidden, certain acts were avoided until the seclusion period was complete. When the days were done, the mother called her women friends together. They gathered for meat, and she formally performed the acts that had been forbidden. The seclusion was lifted. The child entered the world. Even the cutting of the umbilical cord followed specific rules depending on the baby's sex. For a boy, the cord was tied 4 times and cut at the second knot. For a girl, the cord was tied 3 times and cut at the second knot. And after it was buried, the placement told the community the sex of the child. The bathing shed and the burial spot of the cord were placed to the right of the doorways for a male child, to the left for a female. Anyone who knew the cord could read the homestead like a sign. A new life had arrived, and this is what it was. When twins were born, the Luo called them Rude. Their arrival was welcomed with a special ceremony called Nyasi, officiated by the birth attendant. But if a woman gave birth to twins as her very first children, the community considered this a sign that required attention. She was sent back to her parents' home for cleansing, because in that specific situation, twins as the very first birth, it was believed that one of the two would not survive long. This was not fear. It was preparation, spiritual management for what was understood to be a delicate beginning. And unlike some other communities, the Luo did not harm twins. They were never considered so dangerous that they needed to be removed. Instead, elaborate rites were performed around them, rites that continued as they grew and even carried through to their marriages. Triplets, even rarer. Their birth was reported immediately to the Ruoth, the chief, who blessed each child and gave each one a milking cow. 3 lives, 3 cows, 3 blessings from the highest authority in the land. Once the seclusion period ended and the baby entered the world, protection followed immediately. Small charms were hung around the baby's neck, protection against disease, protection against evil eyes, the harm that could come from someone looking at the child with bad intention. And for the mother, she carried a stock of sorghum whenever she went out of the house in the first month after birth. She wore a cross marked with ash on her forehead. These were not superstitions without reason. They were visible signs telling the community this woman is newly delivered. Handle her with care. Keep harmful things away. And there was one more protection, a strict boundary. A man whose wife was still in early pregnancy, 1 to 2 months, was considered ceremonially unclean and could not come within 10 meters of a homestead with a newly delivered baby. The same applied to anyone who had recently buried a relative. New life and recent death were kept at a careful distance from each other because the Luo understood that these two forces, one arriving, one departing, needed to be kept apart. The Luo did not see birth as something that happened to one woman in one room. They saw it as something that happened to everyone. The Nyamrerwa who guided the child out, the first wife whose house received them, the community that fed and protected the mother, the women who gathered when the seclusion ended, the elders who watched over twins, the chief who blessed triplets. Every birth was a village matter because every child born into a Luo homestead belonged not just to a mother and a father, but to a people. This is Echoes of the Luo. In our next video, Luo child names and naming ceremonies. Who names the child, when they are named, and what the name they are given says about the world they arrived into. Ainya.